Hi, I'm Venessa Giunta. I am an author and an editor and an all-around like to talk about things person and a little awkward sometimes. But one of my favorite things to do is talk to authors, right? I love talking to authors about their process, their writing, their careers, their marketing, all those things. And I really love just sitting down and just talking about stuff. I mean, communication is my love language. so that's really what I had in mind. I really wanted a situation where I could just have a conversation with somebody. So, and a conversation and a cocktail is really all about us hanging out and drinking together and talking about the stuff. Hey, everybody. Hello, October K Santerelli.
Hi.
Welcome. What you drinking tonight?
I'm calling it a pink dream. It's mostly edible glitter, honestly. So.
That seems so you. This seems so me. I'm drinking basically cacao, brewed cacao with some hot chocolate mix on top of it and some rum. So, huzzah. All right. Well, welcome. I'm so glad you could join me tonight. So, I'm sorry?
Thank you for having me.
Oh, I love being, I mean, you and I, we know each other, so we've chit-chatted before, not on camera. So, not on camera, but we've got, yes, thank you. It is the best cup. I have the matching, I have a matching candle. My husband got me this. And then the next year, without knowing, my sister got me the matching candle that says, "Fuck off, I'm editing." So, hello, everyone. I see Tiffany out there and Anita and Joe many times. So, so please say hello if you're out there because we love to talk to y'all too. So Toby, I'm sorry, October. I'm so used to calling you Toby. I should call you October for the official things. So,
yeah.
Mr. Santerelli.
Oh,
so you write, you are published through a publishing company, yes?
Mm-hmm. Yeah.
Go ahead.
I'm with Falstaff and working on getting even more publishing deals with other people as well.
Yay! And you have kind of, are you indie publishing stuff also, or you have plans to indie publish things also?
Honestly, I believe that hybrid is one of the best ways to enter the publishing industry. A little bit of both, get a marketing team to handle half of your work and
then pull those readers over to the rest.
Exactly.
Yeah.
I do have one book that was published through an indie press and is currently being swapped to a different press at the moment. Storm's Eye, which I wrote in David Brin's Out of Time series, is technically indie published.
Yes, nice. Awesome. So share with us your origin story. What made October want to be a published writer, like a real writer?
It's one of those moments that I call it like a lightning strike moment. The first time I found out a writer was a job you could have, I was in 7th grade. Don't ask me why, but until 7th grade, I literally thought that everybody who had ever written a book was already dead. And the only time you ever found new books was because somebody just like found one and decided to make copies of it. And I don't know. So I found out because we did a poetry unit in language arts class and we had to staple all our little poems into a little booklet. And I did mine with like crayon drawings.
It was illustrated.
Right? I turned it in, and then when the teacher gave it back, in red ink on the front, it said, A+, this could be professional. And I went up to her after class and was like, what do you mean professional? And she was like, you could be a writer. And I was like, you can do that? And the moment she said that, it was over, and my parents were utterly dismayed. I started writing in 7th grade.
Yes. Yeah, that's a complete opposite of my mom. Don't get me wrong, my mom's very encouraging, but she told me when I told her I was whatever year, however old I was, 12 or 14 or whatever, and I said I wanted to be a writer, and she said, that's a very competitive field, which is of course true.
Yeah.
Especially then when you didn't have all these roads to, do your own stuff. But of course, my young 14-year-old brain was like tacked onto the end. So of course you couldn't possibly succeed to the end, right? So yeah. But excellent. I love that. I love that you discovered you could be a professional writer.
And I dedicated my first book to that teacher. So it's dedicated to Miss Bamford. Shout out. The best language arts teacher in the world.
Yes. I love that. And so does Miss Bamford have a copy of your book?
She does. And she put it on the shelf in her middle school because she still teaches language arts.
Oh, I love that. Well, I mean, it doesn't surprise me. It's not like you're 50 years old,
But it was a while ago that I was in 7th grade.
Yes.
At least a couple of years.
Yes. So let me say hi to Dillian. Nice to see you. And Coffee is here. Ace Coffee. Huzzah. Thank you for stopping in. So let's talk a little bit about how did you said that you wrote in David Brin's world. Mm-hmm. How did that come about? That's really interesting.
It's actually a really funny story. A couple of years ago at Fan Expo in Utah, I met Mercedes Lackey, who is a fantasy author and like one of my favorite authors. So
honestly, if people don't know who Mercedes Lackey is, I don't want them watching my show. Y'all can just go. No, I'm not. I'm kidding. Joe, I'm kidding. I'm not running anybody off. I promise. Anyway, go ahead.
But if you haven't read Mercedes Lackey, you should pick some up. And so she's one of my favorite authors. I met her, played it real cool, and then we got to be friends because I wasn't nerding out as hard as I felt like nerding out.
Yes, I understand this.
And then a few months later, like we chat online and we email back and forth. And a few months later, she sends me an email and she goes, "Hey, do this." Like, it wasn't a question. It wasn't she was like, "Just do it." And it was an email from David Brin saying, "Hey, friends in the writing industry, I'm looking for you or your apprentices to write things." And she offered me up as a sacrifice. And,
as she does.
And
to the dark god of David Brin.
Yeah. But I was just kind of offered to her. And then I wrote an outline and a first chapter sample, and he liked it and went from there.
Nice. I love that. And that, I think that really illustrates how important it is to go places where writers are and network. And it doesn't matter at what level you are, because you hadn't had anything published at that point. Is that right?
Nope.
Aside from your poetry chapbook in 7th grade.
Right, with the crayon drawings.
Right.
There's one of a cat.
Excellent.
Yeah, no, I hadn't had anything published at the time. I was in the process of writing. I actually started the book that's coming out in February, City of Day, which is being published through Falstaff. I actually started that book after I met Mercedes Lackey. She helped me with my outline. And that book is finally coming to fruition. But this was like 2018, and I was nothing, and nobody wasn't even a sensitivity reader yet. So
yeah. I have a funny story about Mercedes Lackey and her husband Larry.
I love them.
So I also know Mercedes Lackey, not as well as you do, but yeah, the way that you have connections to some of these like super successful authors is just amazing. But you know, I'm second to the director for the writers track for Dragon Con, as you know. And so I've moderated her, you know, we've had her on panels even when I haven't moderated her, you know, so I've known her for years. And Larry was with her husband, who is sometimes they co-write, but he's mainly known for his art, right? He's an incredible artist.
Are amazing.
I had never met him up until this point, and they were on a panel together with a few other people, and I was set to moderate the panel. And so as I do before the panel, I go up, and the people I don't know, I introduce myself to and everything. So I came up, they were sitting next to each other, and I kind of came up, behind and, kind of between them. And I said hi to Misty, and I said, hi, I'm Venessa. I'm going to be, to Larry, I said, I'm Venessa. I'm going to be moderating you today. And he looks at me and he goes, oh, you think so, do you? I was like, we're going to get along famously. This is going to be awesome.
The convention in Utah where I met Misty was actually one of the few times Larry was not with her. And I met him at another convention at Emerald City like the next year, because Misty invited me up for dinner, and we watched the Lego movie. And that's how I met Larry. He was like, I'm watching the Lego movie. Are you in? And I was like, sure. Like, let's do it.
Let's do it. I can think of nothing better that I want to do right now is watch the Lego movie with Misty and Larry. Yes. I love it. I love it. That's hilarious.
It was a lot of fun.
Yes. So we got a few more people. Sad Dragon is here. That makes me sad. No, it makes me happy you're here, but you're sad. So, and Max is here, who it looks like. Oh, Cheryl and John. Oh, you're their favorite writer. And Veronica. Hello, welcome. Y'all are welcome to ask questions in the chat as well, and we will field those as we are able. So, October, you mentioned that you're a sensitivity reader. Mm-hmm. So, for those who don't know, can you explain what that is, and then maybe let us know how you got into it?
So a sensitivity reader is a person of a minority group who reads other people's manuscripts for the content of that minority group. So like I do LGBTQ plus sensitivity reading. I read for queer characters, and people will give me their manuscript, especially I get a lot of cis straight people who are writing queer characters for representation and diversity purposes. Mm-hmm. And I double check that they're treating the queer characters respectfully. I double check that they're not using outdated slang or terminology. I help add depth that they might not recognize or realize needs to be added or could be added to make the characters more realistic. And then I let them know overall how it works with their story and try and fit it in a little bit better if it doesn't quite mesh.
I love that. Yeah, I think that's so important because, we can't all have every experience that's out there. I mean, it would be no different that if you were writing something about space, you would want someone who knew about space to read it and make sure you didn't fuck anything up.
Right.
Except this is about people, which to me is much more important than that, because you can actually do damage to people without intending to and without realizing you're doing it. And I think that's way worse than, getting the speed of light wrong.
Yeah, the whole field actually came about because of that. Like sensitivity reading is a relatively new thing in the publishing industry, like within the last 5 years or so. Mm-hmm. And it's because a bunch of people published books and they were like, I'm being, representative and I'm, expanding diversity, but they were people who didn't have the lived experience writing stereotypes. Mm-hmm. And actively harming those communities. And those communities were protesting enough that those books got taken down.
Yes,
so,
as they should.
Yeah. And then sensitivity reading became a thing where people were like, maybe we should ask them. Yeah. And here I am.
Here you are.
It was directly in the wake of those that I actually got my start as a sensitivity reader. Mm-hmm. I was at Superstars Writing Seminar, which is a business of writing convention here in Colorado. And it's run by Kevin J. Anderson mm-hmm. and a bunch of other authors and writers. And he comes up at the end of the convention. I think it was like the second or third day in, so it's near the end. And he goes, October, I've written a book. There's a gay character in it. I don't know if you noticed I'm not gay. And I was like, really?
Yeah, I wouldn't even really have had to talk to you to know.
No. And then I was like, so do you want me to read it, Kevin? And he was like, yeah, that would be nice. And so my first sensitivity read was actually for Kevin J. Anderson's Staked, which was a book about vampire hunting in Colorado Springs.
That's funny because you don't when you think of Kevin J. Anderson, you definitely don't think vampires.
It was a cute book.
Oh, he's an excellent writer. Like he's a I mean, there's a reason he has hundreds of titles, right? I mean, you know, so he is definitely an excellent writer. And you know, it's very heartening to see someone who is at the level he's at recognize that there is a gap in his knowledge and he cannot bring he does not default to bringing that realistically into his books, and that he is willing to, and not just willing, but actively, you know, interested in finding people who can give him that feedback. So that is fabulous. I love how you're setting me up for all these topics. This is just like excellent. We work so well together.
I know.
So, okay. So you mentioned Superstars, and I actually wanted to talk to you about that too. Mm-hmm. So Superstars of Writing, as you said, is a business conference that happens annually in Colorado. So, how did you get involved with that?
So the first time I ever heard about it was actually at Dragon Con. There was, I was, okay, back a little step further. I trained Jim Butcher's dog.
You are hilarious. No name dropping here, folks. No name dropping.
And so he was like, oh, you're going to Dragon Con? You should talk to so-and-so. I went and talked to so-and-so, and so-and-so introduced me to everybody. Like everybody. I met everybody that weekend. And because I met all of those people, I started hearing about Superstars from like half a dozen of them who had already gone. And I was like, oh, that sounds, you know, really interesting, really informative. It'll help me, you know, actually get into the thing. Because I was writing at that point, but I had no idea what to do with it when I was done. Mm-hmm. So I applied for the Superstars scholarship. And I didn't get it. Oh. But one of the teachers, one of the founders, knew me and got me in on a comp ticket, because all the founders get a comp ticket. I slept on a floor in a hotel room.
You do what you got to do, right?
And I went to the conference. And it was awesome. It was so like they make the joke all weekend long that it's going to be like you're trying to drink water out of a fire hose, and they're not kidding.
I had that feeling when I was in my MFA program at Seton Hill, because it's the only one that specifically, especially at that time, it was the only one specifically for commercial fiction. So it was the same thing. I always joked that I had to put corks in my ears when I left to keep stuff from leaking out. So I imagine Superstars is along those lines.
Yeah, and it's a really cool conference. It covers a lot of like every side of the industry. Like you can talk to editors and agents from big publishing houses, but you also have like dozens of indie authors who come. Mallory Cooper is coming back this next year, and she's amazing.
Yeah, she was at Dragon Con for the first time this year. Yeah,
I love her. And so you get like a whole spread of, you know, the indie, the small press, the trad, and you can talk to all of the people in those industries and ask them all of your questions. And since it's so business focused, you can talk about numbers and stuff. And sometimes at other conventions, it kind of feels like that's a no-no, because you're like, yeah, let me just talk to you about how well you do monetarily right now in the middle of a convention where you're actually trying to sell your books and promote craft. And this is the one con where you can be like, all right, give me the numbers, give me the spreadsheet. And they're like, yeah, okay, you know, here's how I do it. Here's what I do. I got involved that year as an attendee. And then the next year was when I started sensitivity reading. And then the year after that was when I started work as the diversity and inclusivity coordinator for Superstars Writing Seminar, which is my position now. I am working actively to get more minority persons to go to Superstars, to get them access to the information that is sometimes really difficult for, you know, minorities to get access to, because a lot of times there's financial problems, and this conference is expensive.
Yes. Yes, it is.
Super worth it. Very expensive.
You get what you pay for, right?
Exactly. Yeah. So like we started the Superstars Expanding Universe Scholarship, which is specifically for minority persons. So there is a separate scholarship to ensure that they get here. We're doing more programming aimed towards minorities, and I do a sensitivity reading panel every year to talk about what I do. So there's a lot of that.
I love that. I love that. And you know, I'm really passionate about that sort of thing. I'm very passionate about inclusivity and that's that sort of thing, because, you know, we run Multiverse in Atlanta, which is all about, you know, I know, right? It's fabulous. I talk about Multiverse almost every time, like we have a show, because it's really the convention of my heart, you know? I mean, I like Dragon Con, you know. Say again?
I was blown away. This was my first year going to Multiverse. I was a guest. And I readily admit this was the first time that I got to panel with other queer authors. Like, it was the first time I have actually met in person other queer authors. And it was so much fun.
I love that.
It was the first time. And a bunch of us are still chatting after the convention. We make friends.
Yeah, that's one of the, I think that's one of our goals at Multiverse. For those who don't know, it's Multiverse Convention in Atlanta. It's in October. Next year is the 20th through the 22nd, I think, whatever that weekend is. Tickets are on sale right now. They're the cheapest they're going to be. But yeah, our whole goal is to make a convention that mirrors actual fandom, you know, and where everyone can feel comfortable and feel like just being themselves, you know, without having to worry about too much. Oh, and Joe says October was awesome on the sensitivity readers panel. Yay. Yay.
That was a fun panel. I got to do a lot of really fun panels, actually. I was on...
That's all we have are fun panels.
Yeah, that's true. But I was on the Breaking the Binary, writing gender fluidity, non-binary and trans characters in like sci-fi and fantasy. That one was so much fun.
That was on my track.
That one was a lot of fun.
And then, I was like, it was funny because we do, as all of the directors, we have meetings where, you know, we all decide, like, we all know who we want on each panel, right? But, you know, you have to, you know, kind of.
But then you arm wrestle for it.
Right. Yeah. We often call it like the Hunger Games. There are Hunger Games, and we, you know, and we trade off. And it's like, okay, I'll give you this person, or, oh, I have this, you know, I have this person in, you know, that I had as written as a back, you know, as a backup. So if you really need this person, okay, I can get, but you, I was not letting go of. Like, actually, I wasn't letting go of anybody on that panel. I was just like, nope, these are my people.
Yeah, so. I actually went and bought all of the books of the people who were on that panel with me and read all of them.
Yes, awesome.
I'm still in the process of reading some of them, actually, but I've been reading through them since the convention.
Yay! I love that. Yeah, that was just so much fun, and just getting to. We also try to make it a point to, I don't mean to make this like a big Multiverse commercial, but one of the things is we try to make it a point to only, you know, sometimes there's some cons where it's always the same guests every single year. And so to try to avoid that, a third of our guests are new guests every year, you know? Yeah, and we track like if they were a guest last year, and it's not that we won't bring them back if they were a guest last year, but we're cognizant of it, right? You know, so that we do bring in new voices and you know, people who haven't had an opportunity to be a guest at Multiverse, which I think is just a great gig. And then number two, you know, other, you know, not everybody's going to relate to me as a human being, right? And so we have more opportunities for attendees to connect with guests if we have a
wider array of guests.
Right. And different people, you know. So we were super happy to welcome you this year.
It was so much fun.
So yes. So okay, we'll stop.
That was actually my first time being a guest at a convention too for my author stuff. And
really?
I also got my first attending pro badge within the past year. I was an attending pro at Rose City Comic Con in Portland.
Yay!
And both of those were the first time I've ever been a guest as an author. But I used to be a professional cosplayer in my early 20s. So I've been a guest at other conventions. But this was the first time for like writing stuff, which is what I wanted to do my whole life, obviously. Well, since 7th grade.
So how did that make you feel when you got your acceptance letter as a guest? What was that like for you?
There was a lot of this. I opened the email and was like, ooh, you know, and proceeded to go upstairs and tell my roommate, you know, very loudly at the top of my lungs, basically. The dogs were barking and everything was chaos, and it was a lot of fun. I was like, I need to buy a plane ticket. And he's like, what do you mean? And I'm like, I'm going to Georgia. He's like, again? Like, because I'm going to Dragon.
Yes, I know. I feel like you just need to move to Georgia for a month and a half. Like, right? Like you move here right before Dragon Con, and then you move home right after Multiverse.
Exactly.
Oh, Tiffany says she loves cosplaying, and she goes to Arizona Comic Con every year. That's super cool.
Arizona Comic Con is actually one of the ones that's on my list to get to in the future, because I hear a lot of really great stuff about the literary guests at that con.
Yes. Oh, that's fabulous. I don't know anything about stuff on the West Coast. So
that's where I'm at. Well, sort of. I'm in the middle.
Yes. I mean, but I don't know anything going on. Like, I don't know anything about any of the conventions west of the Mississippi. So that's your territory. And then this is my territory. So, you know, as we've talked about, I've got to come out to Superstars at some point, you know, because that's your stomping ground. So I have to come visit you.
Yeah.
So Tiffany says she's going to meet you there and y'all can have some fun.
That would be awesome. I would love a tour guide.
It would be awesome. So I do want to also kind of point out to folks who are watching, especially writers out there who are in the very early stages of their career. Maybe they haven't, you know, maybe they haven't finished their first book yet. They're still trying to get their footing. But you have been very successful at connecting, at networking. You have been very successful at networking because you've connected with some, even, I mean, I'm going to say that your experience is a little bit outside the norm, but it's still the same process, right? Regardless. So do you have any advice for writers who are maybe in that situation where they're still new, they maybe haven't gone to a con, or they've gone to 1 or 2 cons, but they're not really sure what they're supposed to do there? Yeah. Do you have any advice for them?
One of the things that I started doing was, at the end of panels, there's usually a couple of minutes where the panelists sit and people come up and talk to them. And nowadays I put out my business card and I'm like, come talk to me. You know, if you are serious about being a writer, I am here to talk to you. You know, I'll be in your network. But if you go up to those writers at the end of a panel who are talking about, you know, at Dragon Con, it was Crafting Dragons was one of the first ones where I went up and started networking. And I was like, hi, I'm writing books. And, you know, I'm at this point, I've got a couple of questions. How can I ask them of you? When is good? Where can I meet you? How do I contact you? You know, my advice for networking is either bring up what you want right away or don't bring it up at all in that conversation. I've built a lot of relationships by just being people's friend. When I met Lucienne Diver, who is a literary agent for the first time, I noticed that she had made her own dress. Like, I noticed the seam work and was like, oh my gosh, you sew. And that's actually the first conversation we had. We talked about sewing machines and, you know, garment sewing and all of that. And I didn't talk to her about business stuff for like 6 months, 7 months after that. I built the relationship first before I talked to her about that. But with other people, I walked up and was like, hi, I need to know how you can help me get further in my career. Let's do it. And, you know, you either bring it up right away or not at all, because the worst feeling ever is when somebody comes up and goes, hi, how are you? Anyways, this is what I want from you. Because you get that you only ask that because you want to get to them. Yeah. So I think that's helped me a lot, being really straightforward and honest with people, and honestly going to conventions. Even if you only make it to one, if you go to a bunch of writing panels and then go up and talk to the writers afterward and be like, I've got a couple questions about this thing and I think you can help me. You get their emails, you start a conversation, and then make a list.
Yeah. And like, this can't be emphasized enough. If they invite you to email them, email them.
Yes.
Put in the subject where you met them. We met at Dragon Con. We met at Emerald City, you know.
I'll do follow up from Dragon Con, you know, kind of thing in the subject line. And they're like, oh, okay, somebody I talked to at that. Okay.
Yeah. And then, you know, just remind them of what you know, that they, you know, they said you could email them and stuff. But like, that's so important, because that's a mistake I make. I still make, because I'm horrible at stuff like that. I'm just bad at it. Like, it's not that I'm bad at interacting. You know me, I'll talk to anybody, but don't roll your eyes at me. But like, going back and then following up with email, I'm terrible at it. So like, don't be me, y'all. Don't be me.
Yeah. With all the places that you can network, like I did have the weird moment of meeting Jim outside of conventions. That does not happen terribly often. You don't normally meet authors in the wild. You have to meet them in the pens, in
the barnyard,
where they're trapped.
That's right, where they can't get away.
Yeah. So conventions is a really good way of doing that. A lot of times they will have workshops and stuff like that they do online, interviews like this. And they'll be like, you know, here's how you can get a hold of me later. And if you want to get a hold of them, you can do that. So there's other opportunities if you can't make it to conventions.
Yes.
I just don't want people to feel like there's like that money gap, so you can't get over it.
Yes. Joe says, put it in the subject line where you met, especially if you meet at Dragon Con, because chances are you're one of 100 or 1,000 people who met that. Amen, brother. Amen.
Which I wanted to talk about something. You brought up people who haven't gotten published yet and who are still in the process of writing books and stuff like that. And I realized that my very first panel that I was on as a speaker at Dragon Con, the first panels I was on was before I ever had a book in print. Because I'd signed a contract and because I walked up to you and was like, I think I can do this. Here's a list of the ones I want to be on. And again, I went straight to the meat of the matter. Like, it was like the first time we met and I was like, here's a list I made. And you were like, yeah, okay. Like, let me pick one or two of those. And I was like, great.
Awesome. Thanks for your help.
Yeah. And it's actually been really helpful being that person who was on the panels before I was published. I had signed a contract, but nothing was in print yet. So I had literally the right now experience of getting into the publishing industry. And I was on a book panel this year at Dragon Con about, so you sold your first book, what next? Because now my first book was out, but I don't have my next one out yet. And I've managed to hit the perfect niche 2 years in a row. So it's been a lot of fun. But if you don't have something in print yet, you can still get yourself out there and start being present and making yourself known and building your audience anyway.
Absolutely. I love that. And that really speaks to the other part of the job as an author. You know, like I don't even know if writing is even like 30% of the job anymore. You know, so much of it really is, everything is about relationships. You're like, you know, up the line and down the line, you know, like up the line, it's you connect with publishers, you connect with agents, you connect with authors who are further along than you are. You just connect and you make, like you said, you focus on the friendship. You focus on creating a connection with this person, you know, because you also never know when you can help them, right? You just never know because everything is so fluid, like everything's always changing, you know. And then you also need to make, like you were just saying, you need to make connections in the downward, which are your readers, your potential readers. You know, you want to be able to you want them to know your face. I mean, not necessarily your physical face, but you want them to know, well, yes, absolutely. Yes, you want them to know your name, you want them to know your work and stuff like that. Tiffany says she's on the other side where she has 2 books out and I'm just learning about cons and panels.
It's such a like exponential learning curve when you get into conventions. So it's like you start out knowing nothing, and by the end of your first con, you're way up here, and by the end of your second one, you're off the screen. You know, it's quick to pick up. You get. I think it's the immersive effect. Being thrown into the deep end. There is no shallow end of a con. And so you come out the other side every time and you're like, well, I survived. I swam. You did it. Like,
where's my towel? Towel boy.
But yeah, with paneling, I was lucky because I was doing panels as a professional cosplayer long before I was doing panels as an author. So I already know how to sit in front of an audience and talk. And I can fill an hour talking about just about anything.
You're describing my entire show right now.
One of the best ways to get into panels, I think, like the advice that I would give you, Tiffany, is to get on those panels that have more than one person. Don't dive into solo panels right away. If you're on one of those panels with a lot of people and a subject, a moderator will usually ask questions, and it's really easy to just answer questions. Those are my favorite kind of panel.
Absolutely. And so one of the things that I found, so I'm on both sides of cons, right? I'm on the guest side of cons and I'm on the organizational side of cons, right? So I have perspective from both sides, and it never hurts you to email whoever's running whatever. Like if there's, when you're talking about Comic-Cons, their panels are a little different because they're usually suggested and run by one of the guests, right? One of the guests emails, you know, whoever the guest liaison is or, you know, programming organizer or whatever. And they say, hey, I have this idea for a panel. And, you know, I know a couple people who can be on it. It never hurts you to email that same programming organizer and say, hey, I'm a writer of X, Y, and Z. Are there any panels that you would, you know, that you have space on?
Yeah, put me on.
Yeah.
I've done that before. I did that at Multiverse. There was a writing workshop in one evening, Friday Night Writes, and I wasn't in it. And I was like, I want to be in it, you know? And so I just emailed the same person who sent me all of my programming stuff and was like, hey, if there's room in there, I want in. And they were like, okay, you're in. It was that easy. Like, it's that easy.
Yes. The only thing that would, and that particular event's a little bit of a free-for-all, not a free-for-all really, but it's like, it's not like a regular panel. It's not like, you know, because panels are definitely limited by seats, right? Because you don't want a panel that has 10 people on it in general, you know, because then if you've only got an hour or worse, 50 minutes, that's not going to be, you're not, you know, it's going to be very uneven.
You're not going to have enough time to hear from everybody.
Right, exactly.
And so there's a balance on your side of things, on the con running side of things. But there's like, the worst thing they'll say is, sorry, there's no room. And that's not bad. It also is like, they could also be like, there's not room on that one, but there is room on this one, and you can get
sorry, that's an in joke right there.
I was like, yeah,
that's true. Yes.
For those of you who don't know, Nettles is one of the people who does panels at Dragon Con as well, and he loves having people on his panel. If you ask him if you can be on his panel, he'll say yes.
Yes, it doesn't matter. Yes, absolutely. Yeah, he's awesome. I love him. I should have him on here sometime. But at any rate, so the worst thing they can do is tell you no. But as you were saying, they may come back and say, oh, there's no room on that panel, but we have this other panel. Is this something that would interest you?
Yeah.
The very worst they can do is say no. And as long as you're polite about it and you're not pushy about it, you've also made a connection in their brain. So they recognize your name as someone who's willing to work.
There's something called the touch rule that I actually learned about from artists. And it says that it takes 8 times for somebody to never forget you again. So if they see your art 8 times, they will learn your name. If they see your book cover 8 times, then they might pick it up. If you send them a bunch of emails,
well, don't send them a bunch of emails.
But like if you send a couple of emails and you start that process of being like, from your guest application form to your response to yes, I'd love to be a guest, to sending your bio, to applying for panels and all of that, if you can get 6 or 7 times in there over the span of several months, not just like that.
Right. Yeah. Don't send like 15 emails because then they'll remember your name for the wrong reasons. Yeah.
But if you can get about 8 times,
over the course of the 8 or 9 months between when you send in your application to when you're actually there,
then they will remember you and make those connections, especially if most of what you're emailing about is, hey, I saw this, can I help?
Yes.
I make sure to send a separate email to a couple of conventions where I'm like, hey, I want to promote you on my social media. Can I have your logo?
Yes. And they will never say no to that.
They never say no to that. So, and that's another email, and that's another good connection in the brain. Yeah. And so it's one of my little tricks.
Thank you for sharing your tricks with us. Thanks you for sharing your tricks. You're so trixies.
I've just been doing this a lot, in a long time.
Yes.
Longer than most people think, because I was a pro cosplayer from 2013 to 2017, 2018. I was a vendor for 7 or 8 years as well. And then now I do conventions as a writer. I'm just there all the time. I don't think there's been a year I haven't gone to a con except for the plague.
Except for the plague. Yes, I know, right? when you started coming back into cons, the experience I had, and tell me if it was similar for you, is that, cons wear me out more than they used to.
Yeah. Well, okay, but I also have some extenuating circumstances.
Okay, right. I didn't mean to get into that. But even just mentally, just thinking about doing the con sometimes, when I think about doing, we were first coming out of the pandemic, and it was I think Dragon Con was my first con. And the reason it was the first one back, but the whole reason, because I would have had no problems backing out, except I would have lost my fucking legacy hotel room. And I was not willing to lose that. I was not willing to lose that. Yeah, so exactly, Veronica. So many people all of a sudden just thinking about it stressed me out. And I am not, you know me, I don't have a problem with crowds. I don't have a problem with a bunch of people. That's not an issue I have.
It was just the counterpoint to almost 2 years of nobody around.
Yes. That was hard. It was hard. I mean, I didn't have extenuating circumstances like you do, but I was just like, ooh, I am tired.
Yeah.
Also, I'm old, so there's that too.
Then maybe you do have some extenuating circumstances.
Oh, my knee and my back. And yes.
What is it? Your sciatica?
Yes. Get off my lawn. So this has nothing to do with anything, but it was funny. So the weekend of Multiverse this year was also the weekend of Alchemy, which is the Georgia Burn, like Burning Man. Familiar with Burning Man, right? So I usually go to Alchemy, but obviously I could not because I was at Multiverse. And but I was actually today I was talking to a friend of mine who the camp I camp with is called 3 Old Men. Obviously, I'm not an old man, but that means I don't have to do a lot of the work that 3 Old Men does. But anyway, he was saying that they had this idea. One of the new folks who was camping with them had this idea to put AstroTurf in front of the camp,
so that you guys could tell people to get off.
Yes, so that everybody put there. And anytime a hippie would walk on, they'd be like, "Get off my lawn!"
That's beautiful.
Right?
I do it.
I was like, "Damn! I wish I'd have been there." I mean, I was glad I was at Multiverse, but I was like, So yes, it was hilarious. So, all right. So we blew through all the topics I had to talk about. What do you want to talk about, October?
We could talk about so many things.
I know. You know what you should talk about? You should talk about your most recent book for a minute.
Okay. So the one that's coming out in February, I'll talk about that one.
Yes, that's the Falstaff book?
That is the Falstaff book. It's called City of Day, and it is a book about a thief named Thistlin and an island full of murderous ghosts.
Oh, yeah. I remember when this idea came up.
Yeah. I've been talking about it for a while. I affectionately refer to it as the Murder Ghosts books.
Yes.
But the true series name is Nightfall, the Nightfall series, because once the sun sets, the murderous ghosts come out. So everybody lives on boats around the island. And it was actually inspired by a line from Sinbad, like the original Sinbad myths and stories. I have an antique copy, and I was reading through it, and there was this part where Sinbad goes to a jungle village and everybody sleeps on boats at night because gorillas come out of the woods and will like bash people if they're left on shore. You know, Sinbad had some adventures.
He did. That's why there are books.
Yeah, I was like, that's a really cool concept, but maybe not with gorillas. And so I took it and I ran with it, and that's how
Murder at the Rue Morgue, but reimagined, right? I love that. So that is the one coming out in February, and I know you're working on the sequel to that already.
I am. I'm currently writing City of Night, which is book 2, and it's due at the end of the year. And we're not going to talk about how that's going right now. I mean, I'm on track, but boy, it's going.
You're doing great. You're doing great.
All the way back to the outline, because I wrote the outline before all the edits were finished on book 1. And so it turns out, like, I was trying to write the draft and I was like, this doesn't make sense with what I wrote before. This doesn't make sense. They were like halfway through the outline and was like, okay, I gotta go back. Like, this is wrong. And so now I'm back on track, but I had to spend like 3 days fixing that. So
Sad Dragon is calling you out. You're doing amazing. So I know we have a question too. So Veronica asks, what's your dream IP to be invited to write in? That's an excellent question.
Well, okay. Kind of a cop-out answer. Every year Mercedes Lackey pulls authors for an anthology in the Valdemar world. I would love to write in Mercedes Lackey's Valdemar.
All right, somebody you're not connected with.
Because that might come true.
The actual dream IP.
I would like to write with Erin Morgenstern, who wrote The Night Circus. I love the style, and I love the like romance of it. Like it's very subtle, kind of like noir Victorian romantic.
Oh, I love that.
I'm such a romantic at heart. Like, I would love to write something like that in that kind of universe with the Night Circus and just different characters. I met FT Lukens at Multiverse, and I read all their books, and their books are awesome. And I really would love to write in one of their universes, but they typically only do standalones, so I don't think that will happen.
I don't know. You may run it by them and, see what they think. You never know. I mean, you are connected now, so you never know.
That would be fun.
Yeah, that would be really cool. Could you imagine like a whole bunch of the multiverse authors all writing in the same universe? Wouldn't that be cool?
That would be so much fun.
That would be crazy. I gotta get somebody else to edit it because I'm not.
Oh yeah. And then I want to bring up really quick, I do have a free novella called Glimmers in the Night, and that's available on my website, which is octoberksanterelli.com.
Which I think we will have probably in the show notes below. I'm sure Joe has wrangled all those links up, maybe. I don't know. Did I get that from you? Did I even get a bio from you? I don't remember. I asked you for it. You never gave it to me.
Did I
but
not?
Joe, no, you didn't. But Joe's got our back because he's awesome. He's the best producer ever. We love you, Joe.
So I wrote a novella. I wrote the shortest story I could, which ended up being 22,000 words. And I am not a short story writer. It's what I have learned.
Yeah.
I wrote a 22,000 word novella, and it's about a kid who is the son of a witch who runs into a fairy.
Ooh.
And it's fun.
Love that. I love that.
Full of magic and wisdom and
all the things.
Yeah, all the fun things.
All of them. Awesome. So y'all, if you have questions, look at that. Glimmers in the night. I love that cover. That is
Thank you. I did it.
Did you really?
Yeah.
Oh my gosh.
Text on.
Get up there again, Joe. I want to see it again.
Designer do that part. I was like, look, take this picture and make it better.
Yes, make it better.
Yeah, I gave them the picture and they darkened the background for me because I was like, I don't know how to do that, and I painted it wrong. And then they put the text on for me as well.
That is gorgeous. Gorgeous. I love that cover. Huzzah! Yes. All right, you can take it down now. He's like, I'm just going to leave it there for the rest of the show. Well, you'll just have to talk around it.
But yeah, no, that one, I actually wrote it in a month, like less than a month. I started it at Dragon Con this past Dragon Con, like at Dragon Con in the hotel room.
Because somebody told you needed to have
a reader magnet.
A reader magnet for your newsletter. So of course, because you are so driven, you went right to your room and started writing it.
I did. I was like, now I've got an idea. I'll just go do it. And then I had it completely written and to an editor within 2 weeks. I was at 2 conventions back to back because I went straight from Dragon Con to Rose City in Portland. And I was writing the whole time. And then I wrote the second draft as soon as I got home, gave it to an editor that next week, got it back the week after, and then formatted it and put it up. And it was just like less than a month, three and a half weeks to just.
Dang, that's awesome. That's fabulous.
But that's actually how the Brin book works too. Like that book was written and off to the formatting within like 3 months.
Yeah.
Like it was quick.
Yeah, that was during the pandemic, though, if I recall correctly.
That's true.
Yeah. Well, I don't mean though. I mean, it's still. I don't mean though, because I meant because I remember you working on it during the co-working and the sprints and stuff we were doing. I remember you working on it, so I was making sure I remembered it properly because I'm old. Shit leaks out my ears. We've already started. So yeah, but let's see. So you write when you travel, which I find amazing because I'm bringing my laptop. I'm going to write in the hotel room. And then I end up, doing whatever I do.
Whenever I'm around other writers, I tend to like start talking craft and stuff like that. And that usually inspires me. So then I go and I'll usually work on outlines more than I work on actual text. Mm-hmm. And set things aside for later, but I almost always end up writing something. I like writing 2-sentence pitches. Me and my friend Ray were at Dragon Con together this year, and I was like, what's your pitch for the book that you just finished writing? And they were like, I don't know. And so we sat down
and you're like, that's unacceptable.
We sat down and we started hammering out pitches, and then my other roommate at Dragon Con, Trisha, started adding, here's my pitch. And so we all end up like this little writers group. We're writing right then and there, and it was so much fun, and we got so much done that weekend. We did not expect to actually get that much work done.
Oh, Sad Dragon is Ray. You just outed yourself. All right. Now I know what's happening. Veronica has a question.
Yes.
Speaking of I'm going quicker than Joe. He's not keeping up. Speaking of writing fast, National Novel Writing Month inspiration. Do you have inspiration for when you do Nano?
I have done Nano in the past. I'm not doing it this year because I have a deadline, and so I'm like, it's gonna be chaos, you know, anyway.
Yes.
I'm gonna be writing every day anyway. And I just didn't want to put the pressure of having to go to the website and like report it.
I understand.
Yeah. So, but I'm
So
still
what's your inspiration when you do, how do you inspire? Well, I mean, even you're not doing nano, but you've got a deadline, right? So like,
I've been writing every day.
yeah.
3,000 words plus a day for like 4 or 5 weeks. On different things, but like for 4 or 5 weeks. But what I tend to do is I have something that I call my scree partner. So during my part of my writing process is messaging somebody and being like, this is going terribly. This is this is what I'm trying to do, and it's awful, and I'm not having fun, and I could fix it like this. Oh, goodbye. And then I go off and fix it. And so I have one person that I designate a day, and I'm like, you're the scree. And they're like, oh, okay. And every couple, like, I'll start writing, and then when I get stuck, I go and message them. And I'm like, I'm stuck, and this is how I could fix it. And I could also fix it like this. Actually, I like that. Okay. And then I wander back out.
Talk to you later. Thanks.
And I'll do it like 4 or 5 times. And then I'll message them like I'm struggling. And they'll be like, you got this. And, so I do a lot of relying on other people. But I'm a very sociable writer. And I know not everybody is a social writer. I do my best writing in cafes and at conventions and whenever I'm around a lot of other people. So, not everybody's like that. A lot of writers are much more introverted.
I get inspiration when I'm in those places, when I'm interacting, but then if I'm at a convention, I just can't, it's very difficult for me to pull myself out of convention head and put myself into writer head in that moment. But when I get home from the convention, I'm all over that shit.
Oh yeah. So it's like you don't get a con drop if you jump right into work.
Yeah. I agree. It's much more difficult for the con drop to get you.
Yeah. So if I had to give Veronica some nano inspiration, inspirational words or something like that, I would say to actually let the word count be the least important thing that you build up over nano. November is a great time to write a novel, but it is also a time, it is also 1 month and there are 11 other months. So I use nano as a way to make sure that I'm building a new writing habit for long-term success. So this year I'm setting a limit of about 3,000 words and I'm trying to write on the one I have to write. And then after I finish what I need to do for that one, writing on a different one that I really want to pursue to see if it helps me stay focused on the one that I am struggling with writing. And that's the habit that I'm building up this time. But a lot of years I just used it as a way to get more consistent with my writing.
What do you mean you got to get to 100,000? No, you don't.
And this is ridiculous because I know for a fact that Veronica's already at 70,000 words and has already blown nano out of the water. And I'm like, you're going to be fine.
You're going to be fine. You got this. And it can't be said enough to reach out to your fellow writers when you are struggling, not necessarily with specific like plot. I mean, you can with specific plot things, but just when you're struggling to get to the words, hang out with your writer folk because they will help you.
That's when I like go and, my screen partner and I'm just like, I don't need help with the plot, but I'm just going to sit there and I'm going to be like, screen.
Yes.
You're like, yeah, okay. You feel your feelings, let it out. And then I'm like, okay, I feel better. I'm going to go try again.
Yes, exactly.
So the screen partner has many functions.
They're very versatile. They're very versatile. Okay. So we've only got a couple more minutes. So, what would you like to leave the viewers with? What would you want to tell them how to find you, what you're doing next, where you're going to be next? Tell us.
All right. So City of Day is coming out in February. And also in February, I will be at Superstars Writing Seminar in Colorado Springs. And you can find me online at octoberksanterelli.com, on Instagram as O_K_writes, or on TikTok as OK Writes with no underscores. One was taken and one wasn't.
Right.
And then if you want to email me, if you've got questions about writing or me, I guess, you can do that through the contact us form on my website.
Show us your beautiful bow.
My beautiful bow.
Yes, I love it. One of my favorite things about being at a convention with October K Santerelli is that he has the best outfits. That's so cute. So cute. Who has more fun than us?
Nobody.
Nobody. So I didn't warn you that you have to do this, so I guess I will do it. Because the end of every, we want to thank Joe for producing. And remember, this is the Go Indie Now network. And it is always time to go indie now. Thank you, Toby.